Welcome to Quiet Justice Stories. Let's hear a story today from Pittsburgh, the Summit Club. When I arrived at my son's engagement party, the staff refused to seat me after my son claimed I was mentally unstable, possibly suffering from Alzheimer's. And as I was kicked out into the snow, a woman stepped forward and whispered to me. What she said made everything crumble. The incident. My name is Marshall. At 70 years old, I thought I had built a legacy of respect, but tonight at the Summit Club in Pittsburgh, that legacy was erased in seconds. I walked into the lobby, clutching the vintage Patek Philippe watch I had meant to give as a blessing. I didn't even make it to the ballroom. My son intercepted me, instantly flanked by the venue's head of security. He didn't scream. He didn't make a scene. He was terrifyingly professional. He looked at the security manager with a pained, apologetic expression and said, "I am so sorry, guys. My father escaped his care facility again. He is having a severe episode. Advanced Alzheimer's paranoia. He doesn't know where he is." My blood ran cold. "What are you saying?" I demanded, stepping forward to show him the gift. "I'm here for you." My son flinched back theatrically, grabbing the security guard's arm. "Watch out. He carries knives when he gets like this. That box isn't a gift. It could be a weapon." Before I could defend myself, two heavy hands clamped onto my shoulders. "Sir, we need you to come with us." The guard said, his voice firm. I tried to struggle, tried to explain, but my son just shook his head sadly, playing the heartbroken victim perfectly. "Please," he told them, "take him out the back way so he doesn't scare the guests. I'll hold on to his phone so he doesn't call 911 in confusion." They dragged me through the kitchen, the staff staring in silence, and shoved me out the heavy steel service door. Click. The lock engaged. I was left standing in the freezing darkness of the employee parking lot, dressed only in a tuxedo with the snow falling relentlessly around me. No coat. No phone, just the biting cold and the realization that my own son had just thrown me away. "Thank you so much for being here with me today. It truly means more than you know." Before the story continues, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. I love seeing this community grow. Now let's find out who was waiting for me in the snow. Warmth in the blizzard and the eyes of a legacy. 5 minutes. That was all it took for the numbness to set in. I was huddled against the metal side of a large dumpster, trying to find shelter from the biting wind that whipped across the employee parking lot. The snow was falling in thick, heavy sheets, accumulating rapidly on the shoulders of my tuxedo. My hands, devoid of gloves, were already turning a pale, waxy color. I tried to rub them together, but the movement felt sluggish, disconnected from my brain. The humiliation burned hotter than the cold, but physics was winning. At 70 years old, exposed to sub-zero temperatures without a coat, I knew my time was measured in minutes, not hours. Suddenly, the heavy steel door of the service entrance banged open again. I flinched, expecting the security guards to return to drag me further away, perhaps to the street. But it wasn't a guard. It was a young woman. I recognized her vaguely as one of the servers who had been carrying a tray of champagne near the entrance when my son intercepted me. She was wearing nothing but her thin black uniform and an apron, her arms wrapped around herself against the freezing assault. She scanned the dark lot frantically until her eyes landed on me. "Sir," she hissed, her voice trembling, not just from cold, but from fear. She glanced back at the open door, checking for the manager. "You can't stay here. You'll freeze to death." I tried to stand, but my knees were locked. She rushed over the snow, crunching loudly under her non-slip work shoes. She grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "I saw what happened," she said, her teeth chattering. "I saw him lie to them. I couldn't just watch. You'll lose your job." I managed to stammer my voice, barely a whisper. "Then I lose it," she said firmly. "Come on. My car is right there." She guided me across the icy asphalt toward the far corner of the lot, where a rusted, beat-up Ford sedan sat isolated from the luxury SUVs and limousines parked closer to the venue. The car looked like a relic, its paint peeling, and one headlight held in place with duct tape. She fumbled with her keys, her fingers shaking before finally unlocking the passenger door and shoving me inside. The interior wasn't warm yet, but it was out of the wind. The air inside smelled of stale French fries and old fabric. She ran around to the driver's side and jumped in immediately, turning the key. The engine sputtered, coughed, and finally roared to life with a noisy rattle. She blasted the heat, though it only blew cold air at first. "I'm sorry it is a mess," she said, rubbing her hands together over the vents. "I am Beth. I couldn't leave you out there." "Thank you, Beth," I said, leaning my head back against the headrest, closing my eyes for a second. "You have no idea." A rustling sound from the back seat made me jump. "Mom?" a small, sleepy voice asked. I turned around. In the back seat, buried under a pile of heavy wool blankets and a winter coat, a small shape was moving. A child sat up, rubbing his eyes. He looked about 7 years old, wearing a knit hat pulled down low over his ears. Beth sighed, looking at me apologetically through the rearview mirror. "I couldn't afford a sitter tonight, and I couldn't leave him alone at the apartment. The heating is broken again. So, he sleeps here while I work. I run out on my breaks to check on him." The boy pushed the blanket aside and leaned forward between the front seats, curious about the stranger in the tuxedo. At that moment, the overhead dome light flickered on as the engine settled into a steady idle. The light hit the boy's face clearly for the first time. I stopped breathing. The cold forgotten, the betrayal of my son forgotten. I stared at the child, and it was like looking into a mirror that reflected 60 years into the past. The boy had eyes the color of gray ash, a distinctive smoky shade that wasn't blue and wasn't hazel. It was a color that ran in only one family in this city, the Marshalls. My family. But it wasn't just the eyes. It was the chin. He had a deep, defined cleft in his chin, exactly like mine, exactly like Todd's. It was impossible. And yet, the biological evidence was staring at me with innocent curiosity from the back seat of a rusted Ford. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, a rhythm of shock and sudden terrifying realization. I turned slowly to look at Beth, my voice shaking more from emotion than the cold. "Where is this boy's father?" Beth gripped the steering wheel so hard, her knuckles turned white against the cracked leather. She kept her eyes fixed on the snowy road ahead, the windshield wipers slapping back and forth in a hypnotic, desperate rhythm. For a long moment, the only sound in the car was the hum of the heater and the soft, rhythmic breathing of the child sleeping in the back seat. "He is not in the picture," Beth finally said, her voice tight. "And he never was." I shifted in the passenger seat, the heat of the car finally beginning to thaw the ice in my veins, though a new kind of chill was settling in my chest. "You said he lied. I met him 7 years ago." Beth began the words, spilling out as if she had been holding them in for a lifetime. "I was working double shifts at a diner near the university campus. He came in every Tuesday. He said his name was Rick. He was charming, handsome, and he always wore expensive clothes, though he tried to act like he was just a struggling student. We dated for 4 months. He never took me to his house, never introduced me to his friends. He said his family was complicated." I watched her profile in the passing streetlights. I saw the pain etched into the corners of her eyes. "When I told him I was pregnant," she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper, "I thought he would be scared. Most guys that age would panic. But Rick didn't panic. He got cold. It was like a switch flipped inside him. He didn't yell. He just reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. I felt a sick sensation in my stomach. An envelope. Cash, she said bitterly. $5,000. He put it on the table between us and told me it was the cost of a solution. He looked me right in the eye and said, "My career is more important than a mistake, Beth. Take this, fix it, and never look for me again." He walked out of the diner, and I never saw him again. $5,000. The price of his own flesh and blood. My hands clenched into fists in my lap. It wasn't just abandonment, it was a transaction. A cold, calculated business deal to erase a human life. "Do you have a picture of him?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Anything." Beth hesitated. She reached over to the glove compartment with one hand popping it open. Buried under a stack of unpaid bills and old napkins was a small, worn leather wallet. She pulled it out and extracted a crinkled photograph. "We never took pictures together," she explained, handing it to me. "He wouldn't allow it. But one day I saw him on campus when I was delivering an order. I snapped this from across the quad. I kept it, not because I miss him, but because I knew one day Asher might ask who his father was." I took the photo. The lighting was poor and the angle was distant, but the subject was unmistakable. A young man stood near a stone archway, laughing with a group of friends. He was wearing a navy blue university hoodie with the rowing team logo on the chest. He looked younger, his face smoother, but the arrogant tilt of his chin and the way he held his posture were identical to the man who had thrown me into the snow 30 minutes ago. It was Todd, my son. The boy I had raised to be a man of honor, wearing the very hoodie I had bought him for his 22nd birthday. He hadn't just made a mistake. He had engineered a disappearance. He had bought his freedom with $5,000 and left this woman to struggle alone in a rusted car with a broken heater. A wave of nausea hit me, followed immediately by a burning white-hot rage. I looked from the photo to the rearview mirror where Asher slept peacefully. My grandson, the living proof of Todd's cruelty. I handed the photo back to Beth, my hand trembling slightly. "He looks like someone who has a lot to hide." "He does," Beth said, tucking the photo away as she turned the car into the parking lot of a grim-looking apartment complex. "But we survived without him. We don't need him." "No," I said softly, my eyes landing on the passenger seat fabric near my leg. "You don't." There, caught on the coarse gray fabric of the seat, was a single short strand of dark hair. It must have fallen from Asher's hat when he leaned forward earlier. While Beth was busy shifting the car into park and unbuckling her seatbelt, I moved my hand casually. With a pinch of my fingers, I plucked the hair from the seat. I closed my fist tight, securing the genetic evidence in my palm. I didn't need to guess anymore. I knew the truth. But to destroy the monster my son had become, I needed undeniable proof. "Let's get you inside," Beth said, opening her door. "It is not much, but it is warm." I nodded, slipping the hair into the pocket of my tuxedo trousers. "Lead the way, Beth." The next 72 hours were a breathless race against a clock I hadn't known was ticking. Day 1. The price of truth. Monday morning found me standing not in a boardroom, but in a dimly lit pawn shop on the outskirts of the city. The broker behind the glass looked skeptically at my wrinkled tuxedo shirt and the unshaven stubble on my face. I pulled the gold wedding band from my finger, the ring my late wife had placed there 40 years ago. It was the only object of value Todd hadn't managed to strip from me. $800. The broker grunted, barely looking up. "It is worth 3,000. I said, my voice steady, despite the ache in my chest. 800. Take it or leave it." I took the cash. It felt like betraying my wife's memory, but I knew she would have been the first to tell me to save our grandson. From there, Beth drove me to a private genetic testing facility. I paid the rush fee with the stack of bills, handing over the follicle sample I had secured the night before. The wait was agonizing. We sat in Beth's small kitchen, staring at her cracked laptop screen. When the email finally pinged, my heart stopped. I opened the attachment. Probability of grand paternity, 99.9%. I looked up at Beth, who was holding a sleeping Asher on her lap. "He is mine," I whispered. "He is really mine." Day 2, the legal web. Tuesday was a descent into the legal nightmare Todd had constructed. I used Beth's phone to call Harrison, my personal attorney and old friend. He answered on the first ring, his voice panicked. "Marshall, my God, Todd told everyone you were in a secure memory care unit. I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. I am not in a unit, Harrison. I am coming to you." We met in the back of a diner 2 towns over. Harrison brought his laptop and accessed the court records. As he scrolled, his face drained of color. "He didn't waste any time," Harrison said, turning the screen toward me. "He filed a petition for emergency guardianship this morning. Look at this affidavit." I read the document. It was a masterpiece of fiction signed by Dr. Felix. It detailed a history of violent outbursts, severe dementia, and an inability to manage financial affairs. It claimed I was a danger to myself and others. "The hearing is set for Friday morning," Harrison explained, tapping the date. "If the judge grants this, Todd gets full legal control over you and your assets. He can sell the estate, liquidate your stocks, and lock you away in a facility without your consent. He needs the money," I realized, staring at the screen. "He has gambling debts. He needs to liquidate everything fast." "We can fight this," Harrison said, though he didn't look confident. "But with a medical affidavit on file, martial courts tend to err on the side of caution with seniors. It could take months to prove your competency. By then, he could have hidden the money." Day 3. The decision. Wednesday was spent in silence plotting. I paced the floor of Beth's small living room while Asher played with a broken toy car on the rug. The legal route was too slow. The medical evidence was forged, but it looked authentic. If I walked into that courtroom on Friday, it would be my word against a doctor's. Todd would claim I was having a lucid moment in a sea of madness. I might lose. I stopped pacing and looked at Asher. He smiled at me, that cleft chin making my heart ache. I couldn't risk losing, not for myself, but for him. "I can't wait for the judge," I told Beth. "What are you going to do?" she asked, fear flickering in her eyes. "I have to make him confess," I said, my voice hardening. "Todd thinks I am a confused, helpless old man. He thinks his plan is perfect because he underestimates me. He underestimates what a father will do when he realizes his son is a monster." I turned to Harrison, who was reviewing the files. "Get the recording equipment. I am going back to the house." "That is dangerous, Marshall," Harrison warned. "If he catches you—" "He won't catch me," I said, "because I am going to invite him in." The heavy oak door of the servants' entrance creaked in protest as I pushed it open. It had been decades since anyone had used this passage behind the wine cellar, and just as I suspected, my son had overlooked it. He had changed the codes to the main gates and rekeyed the front entrance, but in his arrogance, he had forgotten the house had secrets only its builder knew. I stepped into the cool, silent hallway of my own home. It felt alien now, stripped of the warmth I had tried to cultivate for 30 years. Harrison, my attorney, followed close behind his shoes, silent on the stone floor. He was carrying a small black duffel bag containing high-definition cameras and audio recorders. "Set them up in the main study," I whispered, pointing down the hall. "That is where he will take me. It is where I signed all his tuition checks. He likes the symbolism of power. While Harrison went to work hiding the devices behind the bookshelves and inside the hollow base of a decorative lamp, I moved to the vintage rotary phone that sat on the hallway table. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror above it. I looked deranged. 3 days of not shaving the dark circles under my eyes and the wrinkled tuxedo shirt made me look exactly like the broken, senile man Todd claimed I was. I didn't need makeup. I just needed to act. I picked up the receiver and dialed Todd's cell number. My hand trembled, but this time the shaking was intentional. "What?" Todd answered on the second ring. His voice was impatient, accompanied by the rustling of papers in the background. "Todd." I pitched my voice high, letting it crack with panic. "Todd, is that you? The shadows. They are moving again." There was a pause on the other end. "Dad, how are you calling me? Where are you?" "I am at the house," I whimpered. "I don't know how I got here. I walked. I think I walked for days. It is so cold, Todd. There are strangers in the walls. They are whispering about taking my money." "You are at the mansion." Todd's voice shifted instantly from annoyance to sharp alertness. "Stay right there. Do not open the door for anyone." "I am scared," I cried into the receiver, gripping it with both hands. "I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go to the hospital. You said there was a place for me, a safe place. I will sign the papers, Todd. I just want the voices to stop. Please let me sign so I can rest." I could practically hear the greed short-circuiting his logic. A smarter man would have wondered how a confused 70-year-old bypassed the security system. But Todd wasn't thinking about security. He was thinking about the emergency guardianship hearing on Friday. If I signed a voluntary power of attorney and a transfer of assets today, he wouldn't even need the judge. He could sell the company by tomorrow morning. "Okay, Dad," Todd said, his voice dropping to a soothing, predatory purr. "You are doing the right thing. Just sit in the study. Do not touch anything. I am coming to help you." The line went dead. I hung up the phone and looked at Harrison, who had just finished adjusting a camera lens hidden in a stack of architectural journals. He gave me a grim nod. The stage was set. Miles away in a sleek downtown law office, Todd was moving fast. He didn't call the police. He didn't call an ambulance. He made one call, and it wasn't to save his father. "Felix." Todd barked into his phone as he sprinted toward the elevator. "Grab your kit. We are going to the mansion." "Is there a problem?" Dr. Felix's voice answered smoothly. "The opposite. The old man broke back in. He is hallucinating and begging to sign the asset transfer. I need you there to witness it as a medical professional." Todd paused as the elevator doors closed, cutting off his cell signal for a second. When it reconnected, his voice was cold steel. "And bring the strong stuff, the heavy sedatives. As soon as his signature is on that paper, I want him unconscious. If he wakes up drooling in a state facility tomorrow, no one will believe a word he says about today." "Consider it done," Felix replied. Back at the mansion, I sat in my leather armchair behind the mahogany desk. I rested my hands on the cool wood, feeling the grain under my fingertips. I took a deep breath, slowing my heart rate, waiting for the sound of tires on the gravel driveway. The trap was armed. Now I just had to wait for the wolves to walk into it. The sound of the heavy front door unlatching echoed through the silent house like a gunshot. I slumped deeper into the leather armchair, letting my head loll to the side and my mouth hang slightly open. I had spent 40 years commanding boardrooms with an iron gaze, but tonight I had to become the very thing I feared most, a withered, helpless shell of a man. Todd strode into the study first, bringing a gust of cold air, and the scent of expensive cologne with him. He looked every inch the grieving, concerned son, his brow furrowed with practiced worry. Dr. Felix followed a step behind, carrying a black medical bag, his expression detached and clinical. "Dad." Todd rushed to my side, kneeling by the chair. He took my hand, his grip firm and sweaty. "Thank God you're safe. We were so worried when you wandered off." I looked at him with wide, unfocused eyes, letting a tremor run through my arm. "The shadows, Todd. They were chasing me. They want the house." "I know, Dad. I know." Todd said, his voice dripping with condescending sweetness. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick stack of documents, placing them on the desk. "But I fixed it. I brought the papers to keep the shadows away. You just need to sign here, and then we can take you to the special hospital where you will be safe." He uncapped a fountain pen and pressed it into my shaking hand. "Right here. Press hard." I stared at the paper. It was the irreversible transfer of all assets and the full power of attorney. I hesitated, letting the pen hover over the line. I don't feel well," I stammered, dropping the pen. "My head hurts." Todd's jaw tightened, a flash of impatience cracking his mask. He glanced sharply at Felix. "Doctor, he is agitated. He needs his medication before he can focus." Felix stepped forward, opening his bag with a soft click. He produced a small plastic cup containing 2 large white pills. "These are just potent vitamins for the brain, Marshal," Felix said smoothly, his voice devoid of emotion. "They will clear the fog. Take them and you will feel much better." I knew exactly what they were. High-dose antipsychotics mixed with sedatives. Enough to turn a 70-year-old man into a vegetable for 24 hours, maybe longer. "Vitamins?" I asked weakly. "Yes. Take them." Todd ordered, the sweetness gone from his tone. I took the cup with a trembling hand. I raised it to my lips, faking a violent spasm of my arm. As the cup tilted, I coughed loudly, covering my mouth with my other hand. In that split second of confusion, I palmed the pills and let them slide into the sleeve of my tuxedo jacket, swallowing nothing but air. I took a sip of water from the glass on the desk to sell the lie. "Good," Todd said, visibly relaxing. "Now sign. We don't have all night." I picked up the pen again, but I didn't write. I looked up, locking my eyes on his chin, the cleft chin he had inherited from me, the same one I had seen on the boy in the snow. "Todd," I whispered, my voice raspy. "Before I go, I saw a girl today, in the snow. Her name was Beth, and she had a little boy with gray eyes." The room went deathly silent. The air pressure seemed to drop. Todd froze his hand halfway to the papers. He looked at Felix, then back at me. The concern evaporated, replaced by a cold, reptilian stillness. "What did you say?" Todd asked, his voice low. "The boy." I continued, pushing the knife in deeper. "He looked just like you. Do you remember them, Todd?" Todd laughed, a short, sharp sound that held no humor. He leaned in close, so close I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. He dismissed Felix with a wave of his hand, signaling the doctor to step back. He wanted this moment for himself. He wanted to savor his victory over a dying mind. "You really are losing it, aren't you?" Todd whispered, his lips brushing my ear. "But it doesn't matter if you saw them. It changes nothing." "He is your son," I murmured. "He is a mistake." Todd hissed, the venom finally spilling out. "And since you are signing everything over anyway, I will tell you the truth. Yes, I know them. I paid that waitress $5,000 to kill it 7 years ago. She took my money and ran. But don't worry, Dad. Once you sign this and I control the accounts, I will finish the job. If she dares to show her face or bring that bastard child to my door asking for a penny, I will make sure they both disappear. Permanently. No one will ever find them. He pulled back his eyes, black with malice. Now sign the paper, old man, and do us all a favor and die slowly. He tapped the signature line aggressively. I stopped shaking. I let the pen drop from my fingers. It clattered loudly onto the mahogany desk. I sat up straight, squaring my shoulders. The confused, senile fog cleared from my eyes, instantly replaced by the icy glare that had built a steel empire. Todd blinked, confused by the sudden change in my posture. "That," I said, my voice booming with the clear, steady authority of a judge passing a death sentence, "is all I needed to hear." Todd stumbled back a step. "What now?" I shouted. The door to the library burst open. Sheriff Cooper and 3 armed deputies stormed into the room, guns drawn. Harrison stepped out from behind the heavy curtains of the window, holding the recording device high. "Police, get on the ground," Cooper roared. Todd spun around his face, draining of all color. He looked from the police to me, his mouth opening and closing in silent shock. The arrogance, the greed, the cruelty, it all shattered in an instant, leaving only the terrified face of a boy who realized he had just lost everything. 6 months later. The state penitentiary. The fluorescent lights of the visitation room hummed with a sickly, low-frequency buzz that seemed to vibrate in my teeth. I sat on a hard metal stool, my hands folded calmly on the stainless steel counter. Across from me, separated by a thick sheet of bulletproof glass, the heavy door buzzed open. Todd walked in. Or rather, the shadow of Todd walked in. The arrogant, well-groomed man in the tailored suit who had thrown me into the snow was gone. In his place was a gaunt figure in a bright orange jumpsuit, his hair thinning and unkempt, his skin sallow from lack of sunlight. He sat down heavily, picking up the receiver with a shaking hand. I picked up mine, but I said nothing. "Dad." Todd's voice cracked through the speaker, thin and desperate. "Dad, look at me. I have lost 20 pounds. The guards, they don't care. It is a nightmare in here." I watched him, searching for a flicker of genuine remorse. I saw only fear. Fear for himself. I spoke to the lawyer. Todd continued, leaning forward until his forehead touched the glass. "There is an appeal process. If you write a letter, if you tell the judge that it was a misunderstanding, that I was just trying to help you, they might reduce the sentence. Please, Dad, I am your only son. You can't let me rot in here for 15 years. I am your flesh and blood." I reached into the inner pocket of my coat and pulled out a thick envelope. I opened it slowly, deliberately, and extracted a legal document stamped with the official seal of the court. I pressed it flat against the glass so he could read the bold header. "Termination of parental rights and final will and testament." Todd's eyes scanned the document, and I watched the hope drain out of him like water from a cracked vessel. "What is this?" he whispered. "I don't have a son." I said, my voice steady and devoid of anger. "The man I raised died 6 months ago. He died of greed. He died the moment he looked at his own father freezing in the snow and walked away. Dad, no. This document ensures that you will never see a penny of the estate," I continued. "It also grants full, uncontested custody of Asher to his mother, with a trust fund that you cannot touch. You are erased, Todd. Not because I hate you, but because you chose money over family. Now you have neither." I hung up the phone. "Dad, wait, Marshall." Todd screamed, slamming his fist against the glass. "Don't leave me here. I am sorry, I am sorry." I stood up, buttoned my coat, and turned my back on him. His screams were muffled by the heavy glass growing fainter with every step I took toward the exit. I didn't look back. There was nothing left to see. The fire in the library crackled warmly, casting a golden glow over the room. Outside, the Pittsburgh winter was howling again, but inside, everything was safe. I sat in my favorite leather armchair, a magnifying glass in my eye. On the small table in front of me lay the pieces of the vintage Patek Philippe, watched the same one Todd had smashed onto the floor at the engagement party. "Careful now," I murmured, guiding the small hand that held the tweezers. "Just like that. Slot the gear into place." Asher bit his lip in concentration, his gray eyes narrowed with focus. He had the steady hands of a surgeon, or perhaps an architect. He gently pushed the tiny brass wheel into its housing. Click. Suddenly, a soft, rhythmic sound filled the silence. Tick, tick, tick. Asher looked up, his face splitting into a wide grin that showed his cleft chin. "Grandpa, it is beating like a heart." "It is." I smiled, ruffling his hair. "We fixed it. Some things just need a little patience to be made whole again." Beth walked in from the kitchen carrying a tray with 3 steaming mugs of hot chocolate. She set it down and sat on the rug beside Asher, watching us with a look of peace that had been missing from her face for 7 years. I took a sip of the cocoa, listening to the steady ticking of the watch and the laughter of my grandson. The cold of that night in the parking lot felt like a lifetime ago. I had lost a son, yes, but I had found the family I was always meant to have. Family is not defined by DNA. Family are the people who do not leave you behind in the blizzard. Do not let greed blind you to what truly matters, because when the storm passes and the money is gone, the only thing that remains is humanity. Choose love. Choose kindness. And never forget that the greatest legacy you can leave behind is not what you own, but how you treated the people who needed you.